Kia ora, good evening. The number of burglaries in Invercargill has doubled in the past month. Sarah Bedford spoke to Southland Police Area Commander Inspector Lane Todd, who says the rise is a concern.
Yeah, we've had an increase in our residential burglaries, predominantly in the South Invercargill area. So what we're seeing now is that those figures have actually doubled in the last 4 weeks to what have been on average for the last 6 months. So on average we would get sort of like 6 burglaries a week from Invercargill City, and at the moment we're getting 15, 16 and up to 17 a week.
How much of a concern is this?
We're deeply concerned about it because that's certainly a major trend that we've seen in the last 4 weeks. So we're doing a two-pronged approach. One is we're doing a lot of active work around our suspects and offenders, but also we're putting a prevention strategy in place, which we've just started this week.
Now, in terms of those offenders, do you think it's one group that's responsible for this rise, or...?
Some of these matters are before court now, so I can't really go into much detail with our suspects or offenders, but we're certainly actively targeting certain people. And but more around the prevention side of it is what we've introduced now is we've got teams of staff going out and actually talking to other residents within that street or that community and looking at giving them prevention messaging and also crime prevention advice, and that's outside obviously for us just turning up and taking fingerprints and taking the original complaint.
Now, are there certain areas that seem to be being targeted?
Certainly Glengarry and South Invercargill, and we are seeing patterns in particular areas within that. So that's why we're doing a wider canvass with residents within that sort of area and actually getting people a lot more aware and actually making people aware of what's happening in their community and hopefully using their eyes and ears to keep us better informed.
Is there a message for the public in this?
Yeah, what we'd like to do is have people realise that a lot of these are opportunist burglars. So just being aware of locking property, and that's including garages. A lot of these burglaries are just garages that are unlocked and insecure. So that's the first thing. Second thing is just being aware of people coming and going. And if it's a strange vehicle or a strange person, just note some details and certainly don't hesitate to give us a ring. And when we do have burglaries within streets and we are doing canvassing, just be aware of what the police officers are actually giving you. We have a brochure that goes out with some key advice around that as well. But the main thing is just being aware of what's happening in your community.
A 51-year-old Tuatapere man died yesterday after what appears to have been a workplace accident on a rural property on Young Road, Oropuki. The incident occurred at about 5 p.m. when 2 local men were logging trees, one working on the ground and the other on a digger. 51-year-old Nicholas McKenzie, who was working on the ground, appears to have been injured while processing logs close to the digger and died at the scene. A post-mortem was being completed today and the matter of the man's death has been reported to the coroner. Changes are soon to be introduced to protect New Zealand's vulnerable children from abusers in new legislation announced today by Social Development Minister Paula Bennett. As part of the 10-year Children's Action Plan, judges will have the ability to impose new orders on people tried for serious offences against children, even if they're not convicted. Also being introduced, standardised screening of people working with children and the new child harm prevention orders designed to constrain movements of anyone who poses a risk to children. There are approximately 22,000 substantiated cases of child abuse or neglect each year, and approximately 50 children have died of abuse in the last 5 years. Air pollution standards in Invercargill have been breached a number of times this winter. Air quality standards have now been exceeded 10 times in Invercargill this year. This compares with 20 at the same time last year. However, Environment Southland air quality scientist Owen West says it doesn't necessarily mean there's less of a problem, as factors such as wind dispersing pollution may have helped contribute to a lower number. Gore has had 3 breaches compared to 4 at the same time last year. The Ministry for the Environment has set the target date of 3 exceedances a year in Invercargill by 2016. The Southern District Health Board has improved its performance in emergency departments by more than 20% since targets were introduced. Health Minister Tony Rouse says the Southern DHB saw 91% of patients admitted, discharged or transferred to a hospital ward within 6 hours in the latest quarter. This compares with 70% by the Otago DHB in 2009, where targets were first introduced. Nationally, 94% of patients were seen in emergency departments within 6 hours of the latest quarter, up from 30% in 2008. Mr Rouse says the 6-hour target is the result of advice from ED clinicians who say it ensures faster and better services. Petrol prices have dropped again, the second time in recent weeks after having reached a record high back in July. A litre of regular petrol is now close to $2.18 a litre, having fallen 3 cents today, while diesel is unchanged at $1.53. According to AA, commodity prices or exchange rates are little changed since the last cut, but expectations are that global prices will fall due to increased supply. This time last year, regular petrol was $2.20 a litre and diesel was $1.54. In July, petrol prices reached an all-time high of $2.27 a litre. Stay with us after the break. Rebuild work begins at James Hargest College following an arson attack earlier in the year. Welcome back. New Zealand's housing market reached a 6-year high for the month of July, up almost 15% on a year ago. Residential property sales continued to grow in July, with data from the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand showing the number of sales was the highest for the month of July since 2008, rising 14.7% on the same time last year. In Southland, sales volumes were up just under 23% compared with June and up 8% on a year ago. REINZ Chief Executive Helen O'Sullivan says Southland was continuing to be impacted by uncertainty around the future of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter. The rebuild of a suite of classrooms at James Hargest College Senior Campus is finally underway after the school fell victim to an arson attack in January. Assessment work and tenders have meant the rebuild has been late starting, and it will be several more months until classrooms are usable. In the meantime, thousands of dollars a week will continue to be spent running buses and paying extra staff to teach students off-site in temporary classrooms. James Hargest College Principal Andy Wood says having the first phase of demolition underway has been great for morale, but the rebuild does have some restrictions.
The heavy machinery is a little constrained by the fact that we're using the same foundations for our rebuild, and that means that some of these buildings had to be taken down by hand, and but they'll get there. They're very clever at their job, these guys.
So you've been underway for about a week doing it manually?
Yes, the project started the minute Kids Zone had finished, and the minute the little kids were away, they got into it and got started.
And expected time frame for the build?
We're expecting some of the building, maybe half the building, to be able to be occupied by the start of next year's school year, and the completion will probably be about Easter next year.
It's on the same footprint as the original?
Yeah, with the space that we had, and constrained of course by all the buildings around it, in order to put back the same amount of teaching space and facilities, they came to the conclusion quite quickly the best way to do it was to do it exactly the way it was originally. So 6 classrooms and a staff workroom and some ancillary bits and pieces that belong to food and fabrics, and also our main computer server room for the entire school will all be housed in this building. So it'll be exactly the same shape as the old building on the ground floor anyway.
And cost of the rebuild, Andy?
The final cost isn't known yet because they're still awaiting a tender result. So at the moment they're getting on with the demolition, and the tender process for the rebuild is taking place, but in very, very broad terms, around about $1.5 million.
Books are being prescribed by health professionals in the South to help address a range of mental health issues such as anger, self-esteem and depression. Already available at Te Anau Library and as from today in Bluff, the Books on Prescription program is based on a successful UK model. Public Health South health promoter Paula Randall hopes the program will go from strength to strength in the South.
This program is to go in conjunction with other help they might be getting, so whether it be they're seeking help from a counsellor or they're on medication, or as a sort of stopgap measure between seeking help and actually being able to get onto, I guess, a waiting list or something to see a counsellor. We work with I think there's about 30 books on the base set, and then it's up to the libraries if they want to extend the list, or if there's the prescribers, if there's any specific issues that they think are predominant in one particular area, we can actually extend the list out. But those books we do get verified by health professionals within the mental health field.
And what sort of age group are they aiming at?
They aim right through. We do have a couple of basic picture books that are on the easy level. All the books are classified as easy, medium or hard, and they range from a reading age of about 14 right through.
And who can prescribe these books for people who might need some help?
You can just go to your GP. It can be from any health professional, basically. So it could also be a counsellor, your school guidance counsellor. It could be from Plunkett, because we have some books around postnatal depression or anxiety. It's basically spreading it out across any health professional that wishes to be a prescriber. But also you can actually just self-help, go get the books by yourself and just get them out of the library.
So it could be good research or reference material for people in the family as well.
Definitely, because some of them cover a lot of information that explains it in really simple terms to somebody that doesn't experience the problem, explains what that person's dealing with.
Are there any downfalls to the program that you potentially can see?
I guess the downfalls are around people using a library and also people reading. Not everyone is into reading. We have tried to overcome some of these barriers by getting some CDs and some audio books, and we're just looking at extending it into ebooks as well to, bring it up with technology.
Having good health, relationships, housing and enough money strongly influences New Zealand's satisfaction with their lives overall. The more good outcomes people have in these aspects of their lives, the greater the likelihood they will be satisfied with their lives overall. That's according to the New Zealand General Social Survey released by Statistics New Zealand today. According to the survey, in 2012, a fifth of New Zealanders said they had good health, enough money, good housing and didn't feel lonely, and nearly all were satisfied with their lives overall. Meanwhile, 1 in 20 said they had neither good health, enough money or good housing and said they had felt lonely, and just over half were satisfied with their lives. 87% of the population said they were satisfied with their lives, above the OECD average and comparable to Australia, the United States and Canada. And that's it from news. Coming up in sport, we catch up with the Tall Blacks assistant coach Paul Henare on the Sharks' national title and the Tall Blacks tour to China. From the news team, good night.